All right, so let me put this on. All right, welcome everybody. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk about the 600 f4 versus 500 5.6 because a lot of you guys have been asking me a lot about these long lens and which one is suitable for wildlife photography. So I'm gonna talk about that, and so welcome you all. And if you think that any of your friends would be interested in learning more about super telephoto lens, definitely tag them in the comment. And if you can, I would love to. Hey, good to see you. So so if you can let me know first of all if you are logging in live or in the replay. Let me know where you're watching from so that I can get to know more about where you guys are from, and then tag your friends if you think it will be useful for them. So again, this is my second Facebook Live. Still very, very nervous, and today I didn't have time to comb my hair, so I'm wearing a hat and all. But anyways, my name is Tin Man Lee, and I am crazy about wildlife photography, as some of you know. And a little bit about myself is I was very fortunate to have won some awards, and today I actually brought this. I actually haven't taken them out for a long time. So I won the grand prize in Nature's Best Photography Winland Smith Rice International in 2013, and this is actually the let's see if this and this one is the winner of the wildlife category in 2018. So the reason I show you all these awards is not to brag or anything, but I just want to share with you my happiness when I saw the photo display in the Smithsonian Museum one year. I saw all these kids coming with their families, and then they would be standing in front of the print. The print is, I don't know, 5 feet tall. And on all these kids, if you look at their eyes, they were like happy, so happy, and they were in amazement. And that joy that I can bring them with the photos is just, I don't know how to describe it, and I hope you guys can enjoy it. I mean, in the future, if you can win some awards and have those exhibits, you can also enjoy this kind of excitement. And indeed, that's why I created this group, which is to so that we all can learn to master this craft. You don't need to win awards, but I want we all to be able to create images that we are happy about, and also is in the level of award winning, so that you can really inspire more people. Okay, so too much about this info, but today's main topic is about long lenses, right? And indeed, I have been invited to write an article about how to use long lenses in Outdoor Photographer magazine some years ago. I will add the link to the conversation after this talk, so that you can also take a look. I share some of the tips back in the days. Without any further ado, let me just bring the lens up so that you can see that. So yesterday I showed you the 400 2.8, right? And today this one, anyone knows which lens is this? So this like ugly looking with a lot of duct tape on it. This is the 600 f4 Nikon, and I don't know why the hood is really loose. I lost one of the screws, so I just used duct tape to put it down, because it almost flew off the cliff in Patagonia one time. So anyways, so I'm going to share with you, I know some of you are very interested in the 500 5.6, and I want to share with you some of my experience of using these two lenses, this one and the 500 5.6, and what is my take on it. And first of all, let me just check on the time first. Okay, so I just try to make it short, so that because I value your time. So I want to share with you my experiences. Yesterday we talked about that all the gurus. I don't know if you guys have read the book by John Shaw, Moose Peterson, and Tim Fitzharris. They are all very good books actually on wildlife photography. A lot of good tips. But the problem is that the book, all these classic photography books, they were written in the 90s or in the early 2000s. And the first thing they always ask you to do is to get a very sturdy tripod because this lens indeed is very heavy, and they want you to have a good support. Otherwise, they think that with all the shaking and all, you would not be able to take a sharp photo, and then everything will be ruined, right? So they said, okay, invest. Even if you don't have a lot of money for lenses or cameras, invest in the best tripod you can get, right? But the problem, after I learned it, I actually got a very nice tripod. I got a Gisso, and then later I got a really right stuff tripod. But the problem is, as I told you in my last video, if you haven't go back to the Facebook Live, and you can see it in the watch party or the old videos in this group. The problem is that animals, especially wild animals, they never wait for us, right? Just imagine every time you're driving around, you see an animal, before you can even get ready, they are already gone, right? So why would they give you the time to set up the tripod and then find the best location and then photograph them, right? So it doesn't even make sense to me. And indeed, when I look back into the last 10 years, all the good photos I got were never from a tripod, right? So I want to share with you my first experience. So I was in Chile last April, right? So we were looking for pumas, wild pumas, right? And so our tracker found one on the side of the road. They were in tall grass. So I set up my tripod. Our instructor told us to bring a tripod, right? So of course I set up a tripod because this is new to me. So I set a tripod, and then I set my 600 f4. And then we were all waiting for the puma to wake up, and the puma woke up, and instead of walking left or right, she walked right towards me, and if you can imagine, the tripod was set up, right, so everything is very sturdy, right, it was good, right. The problem is that when the puma was walking towards me, I see that there is this big tall grass just always blocking my view to the puma. So every time she walks closer to me, there's this piece of grass that is right in front of her face. And what can I do? So at that moment, right, you know the time when the puma is within the photographing distance, it's only gonna last 1 or 2 seconds. So you have two choices, right? One choice is that you move the whole tripod to the left or to the right to avoid you shoot it, right? And sorry, the connection just lost, right? Okay, but the problem is that by the time you move the tripod, the puma might have already been gone, right? So you have to just shoot whatever you have at the moment. So I shot a lot of photos, but then none of the photos were usable because there is all this foreground distraction in the background. And you know, for a photo to really evoke the emotion, the photo have to be perfect in that the background and the foreground shouldn't have those distractions, right? So I kept shooting and shooting. At one point, I said, this is not good, right? Because none of the photos were really usable. I know that because it's too distracting. So at the end of the section, when the puma was walking closer and closer to me, what I did, I gave up the tripod and the lens. And then what did I do? I quickly opened my the backpack sitting right next to me, and then I just grabbed the 500 5.6. So now let me show you, right? So if you can see, this is the 600 f4, right? I'm gonna bring up the 500 5.6 to you. So see, so this is the 600 f4, and this one is the 500 5.6. So see, this is how light it is. And this one, I'm gonna get a back pain by holding it. And well, the problem of the 500 f5.6, as I can tell one of you guys who are interested in it, is that, look at it, there's no hood here. The reason is that I broke the hood. It's very flimsy, and it fell off so many times that one time I kicked on it, and by accident I cracked it and I couldn't put it back on. So there's no hood on this one. And this 600 f4, also the hood is not, maybe Nikon is just not good in having a nice hood, right? So this one is loose, so I use duct tape to tape it. But anyways, so what happened was I gave up the tripod and the 600 f4, and I grab this camera, right? So light, right? I basically just use one hand to grab it, and then I just kneel down and then find a nice background where there's no distractions and all. And I was able to take a few photos before the puma just walked almost right next to me and walk away. And imagine if the whole time I was using this camera, if you move left or right or up or down, you change the background completely, right? So you can create all kind of different color background, different pattern and everything. So this one gives you a lot of flexibility in that. So that's one lesson that I learned, right? But I didn't learn my lesson good enough. So the next day, we heard that the puma was up above a mountain. And because I was still new to that location, right? So as a wildlife photographer, I always try to prepare myself the most for any kind of tracking and looking for animals. So I asked our tour leader, like, how long the hike is gonna be? And they said, well, we might have to walk quite a few hours because we have to follow the puma, right? So if we have to hike for a few hours, I'm gonna bring everything, right? I'm not gonna waste any opportunity. So in my backpack, right, I carry the 600 f4, I have a 400 2.8, I have a 70 to 200 2.8, I have a 24 to 70 2.8, because who knows, right? Maybe they will come so close that you can get a wide angle shot, right? And then I have 2 camera bodies, and because one time I didn't have enough water and I know how tough it was, so I carry 1 liter bottle of water in my backpack too. So and then I hike up, right? And also I brought the 500 f5.6 too. And turn out, you just imagine you were in a place where you have to hike uphill nonstop for like 2 miles. And so in that case, every ounce of your weight matters. so within 10 minutes, I regretted my decision of carrying this gigantic 1-ton backpack up the hill, right? So by the time we reached where we can see the puma, I was already panting for air because it was just so tough. The sweat was just coming down my face, and then the sweat just make your eyes feeling so bad. It's like the burn, and you couldn't really see anything, right? So just when I set up everything, put the tripod down and all, and then we were just aiming at the puma started to move again, and I said, "Oh my God." Can you just wait for a few seconds? I didn't even learn from my own experience in that. So as we pack everything up and then we try to chase follow the puma and all, something happened. Guess what happened? So as you know, I'm pretty. If you look at my photos that I posted in Instagram or Facebook, one thing I put a lot of effort on is to find the perfect background, meaning that the background have to have some colors that first of all, you have to be with no distraction, and the second thing is the background should be have a color that is compatible with the color of the animal, because that's all these color theories and all this, but I'm not gonna put in too much effort to talk about it today. We can talk about those in another Facebook Live, right? So anyway, so we were chasing the puma, but as you can imagine, if you're walking on a hill, most of the time the background of the puma is all messy with all this tall grass and trees and all, and the foreground is also very messy too. So in a way, you are basically just following the puma, but then you're just taking some photos for documentary purpose. It's nothing that can have any inspiration value or award-winning value. So I was just looking, chasing and all of a sudden this puma walked to a place, and I immediately I see that if I can just go to this location and shoot it like this, the background would be a blue mountain. Like the mountain was so far away that would create this deep blue in front of the puma. And since the puma is a little bit like yellowish orange, it will look really, really good with the blue. So I look at that and I see that, and it was still about 200 feet away from me I have to reach that spot. But I was so tired at that time. I couldn't even walk. It was so painful. And I was catching my breath and all. And finally I I grabbed my 600 millimeter, I throw my backpack on the ground, I just grabbed the camera and then try to run over there. It was so tough, and everything was dangling around. As you can imagine, right? When you're tired, right? You can't even hold it, and it was dangling. But she had this looking back pose, and then she looked all the way to the blue mountain. It was just so perfect, right? So I raised my camera and said, oh my God, this is very nice background and all. And then I click on it, and then it gave me an error message. Why? Because when you hike up the mountain and all, and you just dangle around, and then if you have a teleconverter, some of you asked me about teleconverter. So teleconverter, the connection with the camera and the lens, sometimes you get loose if you are just rocking it too much and all. So I think the connection have some issue. And during that peak moment when I try to take photos, the contact between them was lost, and I couldn't get my camera again. So again, I just throw my camera away, grab another camera. Well, first of all, I just take the battery out and in, turn on and off. It doesn't work, right? And then I use my 5.6 again, get some photos, and it worked. And I'll show you that photo later after the talk. But again, so that really shows you how much it is. So some of you asked me about the quality of this lens, right? So I can tell you that the autofocus is not as quick as a 600 f4. Well, mostly first of all is because it's a f5.6, and if you know, assuming that the opening of the lens of a 5.6 is like this, and a 600 f4, because it's an f4, so the maximum aperture is like this. I have explained to some of you guys about the concept of it. So just imagine if the sun is dropping now because it's almost sunset time, right? And once the sun drops, it gets really dark, right? And if you haven't turned on the light in like this living room, right, it will get really dark, right? And if you didn't turn on the light, and if you started to walk around, you started to kick on things, right? And then your toe will kick on something, and it will be so painful. Why? Because your ability to determine the distance of things is weakened because there's not enough light, right? So if this lens has only a smaller opening, that means less light is going to come in to tell the cameras where the animals are in terms of the distance. So it take the camera longer to do autofocus. So the autofocus, the initial acquisition is going to be slower than the 600 f4. But the advantage of it is just that it's so light, you can hike for miles and miles without any fatigue with this lens. And also, another critical thing is, so in the last video, I mentioned to you that we are all getting cameras nowadays with 10 frames per second, 20 frames per second, right? Like you can take 20 photos in 1 second. But the problem is that people are spending way too much time in setting up their tripod. And if they spend 5 seconds to set up their tripod, that is 5 times 20, that is 100 photos that somebody who is using this camera, even with a slower initial autofocus, right? But they are gonna get, assuming 10 frames per second, right? And even if it's slower, right, initial acquisition, whatever, they get 80 photos before you even set up the tripod. Or imagine if I'm hiking with this lens, right? And then you are hiking with a backpack just like me with a 600, a 400, 700, 200, and a tripod there. And if I see the Puma right there, right, I can be like a ninja and like this and get to the spot and take the photo. But for you, even though your lens can autofocus much faster, by the time you walk there, by the time you put down the backpack and raise the lens, and even when you're raising the lens, I bet you're gonna be shaking too. So to find the animal is gonna take a lot longer as well. So all these factors coming together, I highly recommend this lens. And some of you asked me about the sharpness of it. And I was actually very impressed with the sharpness because I was in Alaska this past July, and I was photographing some tufted puffins. I don't know if you guys have, sure, yes. Yeah, this lens is also good for badgers, well, according to Gary. So anyway, so back to the topic. I was photographing puffins. Anybody here have photographed puffins before? and you know how difficult they are. They are like little bullets, but then they fly with this erratic speed, and then by the time you saw them, they were just like they flew by. So in order to get a good focus of them, it is very difficult. And at the time I was thinking, they fly so fast, right? So it's better to have a fast lens that has very good initial acquisition to do it. So I was using my 600 f4 the whole time, and but after maybe 20 seconds, my hand started to shake, right? And it's very difficult to hold it tight. And one thing that a lot of people might not know is a lot of you actually told me that you can't get consistent sharp photos. And one of the reasons is that it's almost like playing video games, right? Like you're riding those fighter jet and something, and then you try to aim at something. You want to hold your camera very still. For example, if you are trying to track me, right? So you focus on my hat, for example. And if I'm running like this way, your camera has to keep the focus point on my hat the whole time. But imagine if you are carrying a heavy lens, right? And if I move like this, in order to keep following me, your camera is gonna shake because of the heavy weight of the lens. So once your autofocus point comes to here and comes to here, it slows down the camera to know what you're trying to track. And that's the problem. With a lighter lens, it's almost like you're holding a piece of paper, right? It's very easy to manage the stability of the lens to pan it. So you always can nail the focus a lot more consistently than if you're holding a big lens. So what is the guideline whether you can handle a big lens is, I forgot where I read from some of the forums, is if you can handhold this lens for more than 10 to 15 seconds, like stable like this, like now I'm handholding it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, for example, like this. And if you can handhold 10 to 15 seconds, and if you have very good ability to raise your camera and then point to the target immediately and press it, then you can use this lens. But otherwise, I would highly recommend you to start with a lighter lens to perfect your skill. And you know, like this is just so easy. So I was photographing the puffins. Let me finish the story, right? Using the long lens, I was shaking and all, and I said, I can't handle it anymore. I put down the 600 f4 and just grabbed the 500 just for fun. But because it's so light, I can show acquisition very quickly on the puffin, and no matter how they fly, like up and down, I just follow it very precisely. And I actually just look at some of the photos that I took from that trip, and surprisingly, I got a lot more sharp photos with a 500 f5.6 than a 600 f4, which is crazy, right? If you compare, this one is just what, about $3,000, and the other lens is what, $10,000, right? And I just saw that Protic is coming. But in conclusion, though, there is, of course, it's a $3,000 lens, which means that there are also some disadvantage on it. In that, once the light gets lower, in that when the quantity of light is not that much, the lens start to struggle, meaning that it started to hunt back and forth in that. While a 600 f4 or 400 2.8 is still very quick in the initial acquisition. So basically, it's almost like a curve. When the light is good, the 500 5.6 has almost no weakness. It can get a lot of light in, and then with the ability to handhold it for hours, you get a lot more sharper photos. But once the light is lower, then I think it is still advisable for you to use this prime lens with a smaller f number. Okay, so let me see what else do I have. What time do I have? Oh, okay, so almost 27 minutes. So today I talk about the 600 f4 versus the 500 5.6, and again I want to show you this shocking image, right? So this is the 600 f4, and I should take a screenshot and post to people. And so this one is the 500 f 5.6, right? So you can imagine that this is the difference. And one can save you from back pain, the other one would cause you herniated disc. So that's my conclusion. And So yeah, please write down your questions. Even if you're watching from a replay later, please write down your questions and what you want to discuss, because I will go back to this video and I'll answer your questions definitely. So leave the comment here, and let me see. So Susan asked, do you always put a TC on ahead of time? How do you decide? Yes, I always put my teleconverter on if I knew that the animal is gonna be far. For example, in Yellowstone, where most of the animals are pretty far away, I put on the teleconverter, but who knows, right? Last time there's this wolf that came close and I didn't have time to put off the teleconverter. Because there's really no time. Is that just like what we talked about in the beginning? All these classic photography books, they talk about, hey, you have to have a good support of tripod. But in reality, I look back every time in those good wildlife encounter, it is so sudden. It's always less than 5 seconds, and you always see the action before your vehicle even arrives, right? So by the time you stop the vehicle, shooting from the window or get out of the vehicle, you have to have everything ready, right? You don't have time to change the teleconverter. You don't have time to even change any of the settings. You have to get everything ready. And indeed, maybe next time I can talk about more on the camera settings, because a lot of you guys ask me about, hey, what is the best shutter speed? What is the best aperture? I use aperture priority. How come it doesn't do well every time? And all these questions. And well, I have a solution for you guys, but we can talk about it next time. Okay. So Susan, I hope, did I answer your question on that? And if you put the teleconverter on the 500F 5.6, it gets slow. The initial acquisition will be even slower. So it's only good for more stable animals. But since for this group, and indeed for my specialty or for my passion, I love to photograph like fast flying birds, crazy actions, inner actions, and those moments. So I always want to have the fastest, quickest thing. And the thing that I talk about 5.6 almost goes against my belief. But the time you saved to get to the animal, and also to raise the camera up, like how fast you can raise this and pan it, right? But for the 600 f4, everything is like you're shaking and do this thing, and then you miss the shot. So this one has a lot of advantage on that. So yeah, okay. So let me see. Oh, you guys have quite active this time. All right. So Marcio, I hope I pronounce your name okay. I hope I answer your questions about the 500 5.6. Do you have any other questions regarding this lens or in general? Let me know. Type in the comment. And Gary, very nice to see you. I confess I didn't use the 500 for the badges, but I'll try next time. Okay, Derek. Adding a TC to the 5.6 doesn't seem to pay out for me, especially in low light. Oh yes, definitely not. So I don't even recommend putting a teleconverter on the 500 5.6 because especially for Nikon, seriously, because I have used some of you know that I switched from Canon to Nikon before. I don't like the autofocus of Canon, but I do like the teleconverter of Canon, because after I put on, I was talking to Protik here too. I just think that for Nikon, the teleconverter isn't that good compared to Canon. It really slowed down the autofocus. It's significant. And for Canon, with a 1.4, you almost didn't feel a difference in terms of autofocus speed. But for Nikon, you can feel it. It's really hunting back and forth, and especially in low light. Derek, I feel your pain. It's sometimes you would be wondering if the camera has stopped functioning completely. It's just doesn't work for me. So no teleconverter, and that's actually one of the frustrating thing about using Nikon for me now, is that for 2x is almost unusable. I put a 2x on my 600 f4. And in reality, most of the time, the action in nature happens when the light is not, there's not a lot of light. So that's the problem. So Derek, I hope I answer your question. Yeah, it doesn't work. And Susan, for teleconverter for birds, yes, I do use a 1.4 teleconverter on my 600 f4 for birds, and sometimes work, sometimes it doesn't. Well, for fast birds, is difficult. So yeah. All right. So Rick asked the question about 500 5.6 and 200 to 500 f 5.6. So I don't know, Rick. I don't know which lens you use. Were you the one who asked me about 200 to 500? So I have both lenses, but unfortunately, for the 200 to 500 that I own, it's not sharp. And I asked a lot of friends, and it happened that the quality control of that lens doesn't seem to be good. I have a friend who have that, and he loves the lens, and I did see his photos, and it's super sharp. And I actually have two friends who have the 200 to 500, and they said it's super sharp. And for mine, it is not sharp. I mean, I just don't know. It seems to be a lot slower than my 500 5.6. So I actually brought both lenses to photograph the Mandarin duck one time with Susan, who is in the audience today, and the 500 5.6 blew it away. Probably it takes half the time to autofocus than the 200 to 500, and for me, well, it may be a weird explanation, is that these days I try to use mostly prime lens for everything, because in the heat of the action, I don't have time to actually do the zoom at all. So I tend to always use either the shortest range or the longest range, and I never really go between them. So for example, what I mean is if I have a 500 and then I have a 200 prime lens, I would actually bring two cameras with two bodies, and both are prime lens, and then I would just grab it and shoot instead of actually zooming it to do it. Because like for example, in Birds in Flight, you don't really zoom. And for a lot of the crazy actions, like if a fox is kissing the parent and all this, right? Like the moment is so short, probably less than 0.2 seconds. You really don't have time to zoom out and zoom in, because by the time you do that, you lose the shot. But if you only have the 200 to 500 lens, and if you like the quality, it is a very good lens. And so yeah, I mean, keep posting your photos in the group, and let us see, and then we can discuss more on that. But my experience is that 500 5.6 is it focuses a lot faster than the 200 to 500, but not as fast as a 600 f4. Okay. Oh, Julia, yeah. So you agree? Yeah, the focus is not very fast, and indeed, one time I make a mistake of even not so. Another tips for you guys is always buy the most expensive, well, not most expensive, the fastest CF card or XQD card or whatever Sony is using, right? Don't hesitate to invest in the fastest card, because one time I by accident, I put in a very slow card in my camera, and it just make everything super slow. And I was already using the 200 to 500, which is not super fast, and I missed a lot of shots in that. And actually the main goal of today is really about shortening the initial acquisition, and that answers a lot of your questions about why I couldn't get consistent sharp shot. It's because your preparation time is not enough, right? Imagine I was running with my backpack 600 and all. You just lose the mood to think about the composition, how to capture the moment and all, because you were panning for air, you couldn't even hold the camera still and everything. So those is actually one of the main reasons that you couldn't get super sharp shots consistently. But of course, I'm going to talk about it more. But why are you getting jealous? I mean, give it a try. I mean, for example, if you have two. It's not too expensive to rent it out, and I think this one goes for about $3,000, right? And right, Susan, I think you told me where to buy it. But the thing is, for if you guys are relatively new to photography, I look back into the days when I first started, and I also hesitate to pay so much money for the big lenses. But the problem is, I give you an example. I purchased my first 500 f4 Canon lens for $5,000. At that time I was like, part of me just like left my body. It's like I can never imagine paying more than $3,000 for a lens, right? So I paid $5,000 for that lens, and it's like I pamper the lens every time I clean it up, and like every time I hold it, it's like the most expensive thing that I ever owned. Is more expensive than my car, right? So I use it for about 5-6 years, and I didn't even protect it all the time. After a few years, a year or two, and it has some scratches on the side of the lens and everything, right? And at the time, the 600 version 2 came out, I think, and so I purchased the 600, and I needed to sell the 500, right? And guess how much money I sold it for? So I purchased it 5 years ago for $5,000. I sold the lens second-handed, right? Of course, I sold the lens for $5,500. Can you believe that? It's because the Japanese yen was rising at the time or whatever reason. But the thing is, this lens maintained the value so good that I used the lens for 5-6 years, and I actually made $500 out of the purchase. And so if you are thinking of, I'm giving you bad influence, right? If you're thinking about buying lens, don't hesitate to buy the best lens that you can, because I think it can maintain the value better than gold or silver or what I'm talking about. But this is the crazy. And then later I bought another lens, and then I sold it almost 90% of the original value too. So that's the thing. So don't jealous. Just don't be jealous. Just go and get it. So the four frames per second. So we'll talk for 1 more minute, but I want to get back to you, Morten, about this 4 frames per second. So I have a friend. He went to Brazil, the Pantanal. Any of you went to Pantanal before for the drag race? So they took a boat, right? So then they looked for the drag race walking along the bank, the river bank. And at the time, my friend has a 1DX Mark II Canon, and another friend of his has a 5D Mark IV at the time. And the 5D Mark IV, I think, has 5D Mark III or something. It has 5 frames per second. And the 1DX Mark II has 12 frames per second. And the whole trip, they have a lot of nice sightings, right, of the drag race and all. But for 7 days in the tour, right, they pay how much money? $8,000 for that trip, right, for 7 or 8 days. And then they think about the air ticket, right? That's another, I don't know, $600-700, and then the vacation time, everything adding up, right? It's 10 grand at least, right? Think about it, 10 grand. They said for 7 days, there's just 1 second of the whole trip that they saw 2 drag races fighting in front of them. So this female and the male, I think they have some disagreement or whatever. So they were like having this cross fighting and everything, roaring and stuff. So everybody just focus on these 2 drag races like this, right? And for the friend who has the 5 frames per second camera, he managed to get 3 frames. And my friend who has a 1DX Mark II, he has 10 frames. So 10 versus 3. So for the 3 photos, right? Some of the photos, the claw was blocking the face of another drag race, and all this distraction happening. But for the 10 photos, right, he has a much higher chance of finding the perfect position when one of them was jumping up and crawling down and everything like that. So if you think about it, for $10,000, if you are dividing these 10 photos, or if you only get these 3 photos that is award-winning versus the 10 photos that were award-winning, then it makes sense to actually invest in a faster camera, because you're living for those 1 second. Okay, so anyway, so I thank you all for listening to this this thing. I went over time today. God, I'm sorry about that. I was saying that I'm gonna just use about 30 minutes, but anyways, if you missed the live today and if you're watching it from the replay, leave your comment below, and also if you think of any topics that you want me to discuss in the future Facebook Live or anything that you are struggling with. Don't worry. I mean, even if you're new to this, there is no stupid questions here, because if you look back, I'll put the link in the bottom of the comment that I'll share with you an article that I wrote for Outdoor Photographer magazine about the stupid mistakes I made when I first started wildlife photography, and you would laugh. And so no stupid questions. I mean, any questions you ask, any topics you want me to discuss in the future, write it down here, even if it's a replay, because I will read it. And oh, I'm so happy that I got a lot more active involvement today, engagement today. I love it. So Morton, we need to talk. You need to solve that about the 300 millimeter and the 4 frames per second, because you will be in a very bad disadvantage in that. And anyways, very good to talk to you guys, and I will do another Facebook Live soon, but the topics you guys pick. So type it down, type it in the comment, and tag your friends too if you think they would love to what I talk about today, or ask them to join this group. And I hope to create, because I haven't seen anything like that in the internet right now, talking about gear, real time and stuff. It's so much fun, right? And a lot of the time, all these classic photography books don't talk about these. They talk about getting a tripod, right? and it will ruin our opportunities, right? Ruin our $10,000 trip because of that. All right. So anyways, oh, no worries. There's nothing is too late, right? So we are here to help. So anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for joining in, and have a wonderful weekend, and stay safe and healthy now. Okay. See you guys.